Right, so in the last section we looked at cancer and genotoxicity and the effect of radio frequencies on that. This section we're going to have a look at its effect on learning and memory, and this is a bit of a fun one because we get to talk about some very interesting experiments and how scientists measure learning and memory. It's probably not the way you think that we learn about learning and memory, because we use a lot of animal models to do this. And one of them, I've known about this model for a while and doing a bit of background reading for this session. I went in and looked a bit more at one of the experiments, and I thought to myself, flipping out, this is crazy what they do. But we'll be able to show you all of that. So to recap on the background of this, we have the reason why we want to have a look at, we want to study radio frequencies and their effect on the human and the human body, is that there is evidence out there that, there is evidence, some anecdotally, and as we've just shown, some more empirical evidence, that radio frequencies can cause ill health effects. You have probably heard the story from a family member or something, or a friend that didn't want a radio tower moved up next to their house, and because it causes because it can cause cancer. And we found out in the last section that there might be a little bit of truth in that, but the jury is still out and the data is still inconclusive. But it's a reason for studying this. We went over what electromagnetic fields are. Effectively, it's a spectrum of wavelengths, and you can loosely divide them into short frequency wavelengths, which are like ionizing radiation. You have the visible spectrum, and let's pull this up. You have visible spectrum, which is actually a very small part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and then you have this larger, lower frequency radio spectrum, which encompasses everything from ultra low frequencies. You have radio frequencies where you pick up your radio, or you probably used to before it all went digital. Then you have the ultra high frequency bands, which Wi-Fi sit in and your microwave oven sits in, and then we're going to be looking around here. So we looked at cancer and effect on genotoxicity, and now we're going to have a look at learning and memory. We're looking at this journal from Kim, Lee, Kim, and Kim. And they're from Korea, and this journal review article was published in Biomolecules and Therapeutics in 2019, and it's titled Possible Effects of Radio Frequency Electromagnetic Field Exposure on the Central Nervous System. It's a free journal. You can, if you just search for this on Google, you will find it and you can read it to your heart's content. It's actually not that long. It's probably only 7 sides long. But we're going to be focusing on this section of it, which is the effects on learning and memory. And they start it off by saying it's been hypothesized that various neurological effects may arise as a result of radio frequency EMF exposure due to the proximity of the cranial nervous system during cellular phone use. These neurological effects include headache. This has been reported by Frey in 1998. Changes in sleep habits, changes in electroencephalogram, big words to say, changes in blood pressure. They go on to say neurological cognitive disorders such as headache, tremor, dizziness, loss of memory, loss of concentration, and sleep disturbance due to radio frequencies have also been reported by several epidemiological studies, and they go on to list all of those. You can probably go and check out all of these to your heart's content. The exposure levels of radio frequency commonly encountered in public environments have been found to be at a non-detrimental level to humans. However, with respect to the amount of exposure to radio frequencies on the cranial nervous system, a significant amount of research has focused on rodent behavior disorders, particularly learning and memory deficits after exposure to various conditions. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So I thought this was quite fun. There are a lot of studies that you can do with rodents, mice, rats, etc. In order to test their ability to learn and to remember. You'll hear the term if you read this paper. There's a few things I would think, certain mazes. It mentions something called the Radial maze test. It also mentions something called the Y maze test. And it mentions something called the Morris water maze. So what I want to do is I want to quickly go through what these mazes are, because I think they're really interesting and a really ingenious kind of way of looking at memory and cognitive function in animals. So start off with the Y maze. So what was the other maze called? It was the Radial. The Radial maze and the Y maze are very, very similar. So what we'll do is we'll just show you the Y maze for now, because it's a bit easier. Okay, if I can zoom in on this. Cool. Okay. So this is an example of a Y maze. You have a hatch at one end of the Y, and this is where you place your animal. And there's a door that's separating the animal from the rest of the maze, so it can't get out. And the maze is set at a 120-degree angle, and you have food at one end of the maze and no food at the other end of the maze. And then you have a decision point just out of view of either side. So the decision point, basically, you let the mouse go, or you let the rat go. It goes down the maze, and then when it gets to here, it makes a decision on, is it going to go left to the food, or is it going to go right to the food? It can't see the food at the end, so it's a blind decision. Yeah. So this is called a sample phase, the sample phase of the experiment. So it's not the actual test phase. So you let the animal go down the Y. It makes the decision, and if it makes the decision of going to the food end, that's fine. Okay. Then what you do is you place the mouse or the rat back into the maze, and you see whether or not it's remembered that the food is on the left hand or the food is on the right hand. And if it knows the way to go, if it's remembered that the food is at one of the ends of the Y, then that's like a positive tick for memory, if you like. That's a 1 on your score sheet for memory. If it doesn't, if it gets to the end and it goes the other way, then it hasn't remembered that the food's left at the end of the corridor, so to speak. And you repeat this a number of times, and you get a greater than chance, because if the animal has no idea which way to go, it's going to have a 50-50 chance of which way it's going to go, to the right hand side. They're quite ingenious contraptions. And so what they've done in this study is they've done this experiment with the mouse, with or without exposure to radio frequencies. So does the exposure to radio frequency have a detrimental effect on the mouse's ability or the rat's ability to learn which way the food is? And the radial map and the radial maze is a star-shaped version of the Y maze, effectively. So it has more choice, harder test for the animal, really. But it does show if it does go down the right column or the right corridor first, then it does show that actually conclusively it probably does have a memory of where the food is. So that's the radial and the Y maze. The second maze I want to talk to you about is something called the Morris water maze. Now, the Morris water maze is something I couldn't believe when I first saw this. And I have a video of it, but what what I'll try and do is I'll show you kind of what it's like in pictorial form, and then yeah, right, this might be alright. I'll have to zoom in quite a bit on this one. It's probably going to be all pixelated and horrible. Okay, so the Morris water maze involves, you have a pool of water, and in this water you have a platform that is kind of popping up out of the water, right? So it's like a sanctuary platform. If you place a rat or a mouse very carefully into the water as not to distress it, you can teach the rat where the sanctuary is, where can they get out of the water effectively, right? So you teach the animal where this platform is in the water. So it's clear water. The platform is 1 inch above the water surface so that the mouse can see it. You know, it can see that it's above the water line. They should be able to get out of it, and that's great, right? The test comes next, where the water in the tank is replaced with an opaque solution, so the mouse can't see through the water, and the platform is lowered to 1/2 inch beneath the water's surface, so the mouse has no idea where this platform is unless it remembers where it is from the original clear water when it was 1 inch out of the water. And the rat or the mouse can get to that platform. When they get to that platform, they can stand on it and they'll be safe. They'll be out of the water. They won't drown, which is good. You know, we're not aiming to hurt the animal in any kind of way. It's all done in a very controlled environment. But it's quite a fascinating idea about how you can. It's almost forcing the mouse to learn under stress, because the mouse has got to get out of this water, right? It doesn't enjoy being in water. It's a dangerous situation. It thinks that its life is dependent on finding that platform, so it should remember where that platform is. And so the idea is that you train the mouse where the platform is. You then expose your mouse to your agent, be it radio frequency in this regard, and then you put the mouse back in and see if it can find the platform. And that's the experiment. We have a YouTube video of it, which I will play. I haven't watched this, so hopefully it's all good. I won't have the sound on, but we'll see how this goes. Hi folks, sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you for making it this far through the video, and to let you know that I really appreciate your engagement and I hope you're enjoying the content. Everything that you're watching here was live streamed over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/4085. I stream 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday and Thursday at 9 PM UK time. And if you want to get involved in any scientific discussions, ask me any questions, or just watch a bit of Xbox gameplay, you can head over there to do so. This YouTube channel is dedicated to the science content. I have a second channel where I post highlights of gaming sessions and other miscellaneous content. The link to that channel is in the video description. Thanks again for your time. Now back to the video. I should be an engineer. So, all of the correct precautions are taken. You know, there's no harm being brought to the animals. This is the introductory phase. So, first of all, you wouldn't drop the animal in like that. That's an artistic license. Usually you replace the animal very, very carefully into the water, making sure that its head doesn't go beneath the water. You're always observing them, so you're not they're at no risk of drowning. It then swims to find the platform, which is 1 inch above the ground, 1 inch above the water line, clear water. It gets up on the platform. Happy days. It should now remember where it is. Then you replace the water, or you opacify the water if you want, make it opaque. You can do this with like milk powder or something inert. And you place the platform 1 inch below the water line, or around 1 inch below the water line. So now the mouse can't see it, but it should know where it is. And when it gets there, sanctuary, it's safe. Okay, so that's effectively what they've done in this, but they've done it with and without radio frequency exposure, and this is a test of memory. So the radio maze and the Morris-Water maze test showed that learning and memory functions were, here's important, reduced in rats exposed to 2,450 megahertz. So 2,450 meg, we go up to our 2,450 meg is around here. It's the same frequency that an old TV might have given off. A very high frequency in the non-ionizing radio spectrum space. Okay, there's a couple of studies that show that, but no change of working memory observed in the radial maze test following whole body exposure for 45 minutes for 10 days to the same frequency. Okay, conflicting results effectively. And the Y maze, they've also done the Y maze, the Morris-Water maze and novel object recognition memory test after exposed to 1,950 megahertz at an SAR of 5, which is apparently quite high. I'm not really too sure on that terminology. Recognition memory was studied using the object recognition test, using head-only exposed mouse. So they have exposed the mouse's head only to this radiation. In the study, there was no effect on learning and memory at low SAR levels, but at high SAR levels, only some of the exploration activities were changed. So they're saying that there was an effect at high SAR, so with enough radiation, even at that low frequency, they're seeing an effect. Although exposure to radio frequency EMF could affect cognitive functions such as spatial learning and memory loss in both humans and in animals, direct evidence for the effect of radio frequency on these functions remains unclear. So what's interesting is they have done something on humans, right? So let's have a look and see this. Hosman and Herman, 2003. Let's have a look. Find my... Where is Hosman and Hosman? Here we go. So they're looking at phones. They've said with the increase in mobile communication, concerns have been expressed about the possible interactions, the effects of neurological activity, energy metabolism, genomic responses, neurotransmitter function. Most of the reported effects are small as long as radiation intensity remains the normal range. None of the research reviews gives an indication of the mechanisms involved in this range. However, health risks may evolve from indirect consequences of mobile telephony, such as the sharply increased incidence rates of traffic accidents. Okay, so they're actually saying that there is a correlation between the use of these devices and things like traffic accidents. As we all know, you shouldn't be driving and using your phone, and possibly also by stress reactions which annoyed bystanders may experience when cellular phones are used in public places. Wow, okay, they've gone that far. These indirect health effects presumably outweigh the direct biological perturbations and should be investigated in more detail in the future. So actually, they're not really saying that there's an effect on humans at all. So that's a bad reference, I would say. Let's see if Priest et al. in 1999 had anything to say. This one. Effect of 915 megahertz stimulated mobile phone signal on cognitive function in man. And in this study, the purpose is to examine whether a simulated mobile telephone transmission at that frequency has an effect on cognitive function in man. How have they done it? 36 subjects in 2 groups were each given 2 training sessions and then 3 test sessions in a randomized 3-way crossover design. About 1 watt mean power at 915 megahertz from a quarter wave antenna mounted on a physical copy of an analog phone as a sine wave or modulated 217 Hz, okay, this is power, was applied to the left squamous temporal region of the subjects while they undertook a series of cognitive functions lasting approximately 25 to 30 minutes. The second group investigated for sleep, consumption of alcoholic beverages, and any other substance that might affect performance. The results. This is quite an interesting study. Maybe we should have done this one. In both groups, the only test affected was the choice or reaction time. This showed as an increase in speed, decrease in reaction time. There was no changes in word, number, or picture recall or in spatial memory. While an effective visit order was evident, suggesting learning effect of repeated tests, the design of the study allowed for this. Additionally, there was no systematic error introduced as a result of consumption of substances, sleep, or time. They conclude that there was evidence of increase in responsiveness, strongly in the analog and less in the digital simulation in choice of reaction time. So they're actually saying that your reaction time may increase if exposed to this level, this frequency at whatever level they used it at. Which is a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? Maybe we should be maybe we shouldn't be attaching antennas to our heads. But that is quite interesting. It shows that there's possibly an effect in humans, although we don't quite fully understand it yet. Interesting stuff. All right, where are we on here? Direct evidence for the effect of radio frequencies on these functions remains unclear. The hippocampus, involved in spatial memory and learning processes, and low frequency EMFs at 700 Hz can alter electrical activity in hippocampal slices of rat brain. So they've tested the conductivity of rat brain in terms of from the hippocampus and with and without exposure to the radiation, and seen whether or not they signal properly. And they've shown that it can alter this electrical activity. Similarly, exposure to 1800 megahertz, 15 minutes per day, SAR of 2.4, has been shown to reduce excitatory synaptic activity of cultured hippocampal neurons in a dish. And we know already that we see effects of radio frequencies on cells in vitro cultures. So in dishes, and we know that from the last section on cancer and genotox. Excuse me. Right. So we are getting to the end of this section. Right. Recently, with regard to the effects of radio frequencies on cognitive function, it has been found that exposure induced the improvement in cognitive behaviour of triple transgenic mice. Right, we'll go through what that means. And have a cognitive impairment such as human Alzheimer's disease. So I already know about this this mouse. So effectively, they've genetically altered a lab mouse strain to spontaneously develop symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and this is called the 3XTGAD. Which is here 3 times. These mice have a cognitive impairment that is relatable to Alzheimer's disease, and they're used in Alzheimer's research. So what they're saying is radio frequencies used on these mice give an improvement in cognitive behavior. It says this experiment was performed with a Wi-Fi type 2.4 gigahertz for 2 hours a day for 1 month. The experimental results suggest that exposure to radio electromagnetic frequencies can lead to effective memory recovery in cognitive impairment in experimental animal model. with loss of cognitive function caused by Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't mean it works in Alzheimer's patients, it means that it works specifically in this mouse model. Despite numerous studies, it remains unclear if radiofrequency electromagnetic fields exposure is a risk for cognitive function, including memory. However, transgenic Alzheimer's mice long-term exposure, more than 8 months, have been reported to improve cognitive abilities. And they go on to say that this suggests that exposures to frequencies can improve memory of Alzheimer's disease patients, which is based on reduced response time, less anxiety, but no effect on exercise activity, body weight, or body temperature, which is good for them to control.